Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Christmas Carol from 1938. Probably the most remade movie in the history of film, a movie that is approaching its 100-year birthday, anniversary, whatever you call it. The story, the classic Charles Dickens story. I may or may not be doing a top 5 A Christmas Carol rankings of watch all of the different Christmas carols movies and then rank my favorite 5. I might be doing that. That is a potential plan since this episode is coming out the day before December, the month of December, obviously. Not only just the month of holidays, of many holidays, but also of Christmas, the prime capitalist holiday of the year. It's a holiday that I have warmed up to. Obviously, I loved it growing up. But once I got into the working world, I worked at a movie theater and also at a Costco. And let me tell you, the holidays are by far the worst time of year and are the time of year when you see how absolutely horrible people are. I mean, it is not what all of the Christmas movies make it out to be. It is not a holiday season of joy. Actually, part of this movie, I really appreciate how it shows how horrible people are. There is a moment where Scrooge is with the ghost of Christmas Present, and it is showing people on the streets angry as they're doing their shopping and threatening to fight each other. And then the ghost of Christmas Present waves his little magic horn at these people, and then they become friendly to each other. But that's definitely something that's not portrayed in the majority of most Christmas movies. Maybe Jingle All the Way gets kind of close to that. But yeah, so it took me a while. It's been, at this point, 7 years since I've worked at Costco, worked for any business that really highlights the disgusting nature of people during the holidays. So as with time heals all wounds, so has my love and appreciation for this holiday. Even though I don't really do anything special, I do kind of, actually, especially this year, considering during October, I did a big month of horror movies. During the month of December, doing a big month of Christmas movies. So to have that contrast of horror movies to Christmas movies, I do kind of like that changing of gears as it gets a bit colder. Going from horrified to sweet, saccharine, joyful, just kind of warm feelings and nostalgia. Which this movie highlights a lot of those things, that nostalgia, that memories of Christmas past and what it was like when you were a child. And this movie being almost 100 years old and being, I believe, the first adaptation of A Christmas Story, or of A Christmas Carol, that I think it holds up really well. I mean, it's a really simple story. And I really enjoyed, I believe I watched it last year when I had taken a break during the month of December to, my computer died and I had to wait for a new one to get delivered. So I took off December and watched a bunch of Christmas movies that I didn't review, but I rewatched it this year, reviewing it this year, and let's get into it, shall we? I mean, it's a movie that obviously I don't think I could spoil if I wanted to. It is the movie of Scrooge, one of the most disgusting characters in the history of characters. Like he's got a lot. It's actually very interesting. It's very amazing how much of our country currently in America values the people in our lives that resemble Scrooge, right? The people that have the same values as Scrooge in this story are people that are very valued in capitalist society, right? Like you think of the Elon Musks or the Trumps or the Jeff Bezoses, these people with like exponential wealth, lifetimes generational wealth, and how they do nothing to help the poor people of the world and demonize them, as Scrooge does in this movie. The beginning, he's like at work, and these two guys come in to collect money for the poor, and he's like, well, don't you have prisons? Don't you have like these things? Don't you have like these things for these institutions to cage these poor people in? He's like, well, why don't you just put them in there? You know, he's like, well, not everybody's like that's not what we should want our society to be, to put people who are having problems with life and maybe weren't born into the kind of wealth you were born into, weren't necessarily given the kind of head starts that you may have been given. You weren't born into a family of gem miners during apartheid South Africa, right? You know, you weren't born into a family of real estate tycoons and received a bunch of money from your family to start your own business, right? It's just kind of amazing because this Scrooge it's a great performance by this guy playing Scrooge. What is his name? Ebenezer Scrooge. Reginald Owen, I think, plays a great Scrooge. And I think he's wearing makeup. I mean, he might be old. Definitely could be old, but I kind of looked like maybe wearing makeup. I don't know. It was pretty great, though. Great performance of a Scrooge. Like, he just seems like a crotchety old man that just does not want to spare the smallest amount of money to help the people in need during the holiday season, no less. And, of course, treating his employee like garbage, as Jeff Bezos does to his employees, or Elon Musk is currently doing to the employees of Twitter, right? Just completely treating them like garbage, not wanting to pay them a living wage, not wanting to give them time off to be with their families, not wanting to allow them to work from wherever is best for them. You know, it's just it's really amazing to see this character, Ebenezer Scrooge, and how so many people just value Ebenezer Scrooge before he turned into a good person. Like, this whole story is showing you how this horrible person, how he's been, how he treats people now, how he's going to be looked at after he's dead, which isn't true in the reality. It's like, people, if Ebenezer Scrooge was alive today, people would love him. People would, like, there would be bootlickers of Ebenezer Scrooge. They'd be on social media going like, he's a genius. He has to be smart. Look at all this money he's made. Who cares how he treats his employees? Why should he give his money to help poor people? Poor people are just lazy. They need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps like Ebenezer Scrooge did. It's just insane, right? And it's a movie that I'm sure, and a story I'm sure they've all seen, but don't put that connection together. But it's, a great, seeing it illustrated in this movie is great, and the performance by Ebenezer Scrooge in this one is great. Definitely a guy who is profit over people always, right? That is the capitalist way. People mean nothing. Profit is the only thing that these people care about. That is it. Human beings mean nothing to them. They are only a means to make profit. That is Ebenezer Scrooge to a T. To a T. If you don't want to sacrifice, if you don't want to go hardcore for me to make my money, work for me while I pay you little to nothing. If that's not the kind of life you want to live, to work hardcore for me, then you should go to prison. If you don't want to lift yourself up by your bootstraps, right? It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote.
I figured out a way on my website to offer prints for every single painting. So if you go to a painting, you can buy the original painting or you can buy a print for everything. Artwork that you don't want to spend $100 plus on, 9 by 12 inch ink painting on paper, $100 for the original one-of-a-kind piece of artwork. Paintings range in price depending on their size. The 8 by 10 print, $20. Available in the store at inspireddisorder.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
I also enjoy the effects they have. I mean, this is a movie, again, almost 100 years ago, right? In 16 years, this movie will be 100 years old, right? In the year 2038, 16 years from now, this is going to be a movie made 100 years ago. And the effects of this movie are great. I think are better than most, like, there are big budget Hollywood movies using the newest, latest technology that make effects that are as believable or less believable than the effects in this movie, right? Whether it's the ghost, right? What is that ghost called? Marley's ghost, right? Shows up, he's got the thing around his head, and he's got the chains. And he's like semi-transparent. Great. You see how it moves when the camera pans around. Great job. Almost 100 years old. And there are big blockbuster movies today that don't, just that simplicity. The simplicity of in-camera effects. The ability to do things with very little. When it shows him, when he's greeted by the spirit, or the, what is that? Is it the Spirit of Christmas Past? Yeah. The woman with the crown, and she takes him and they fly over the city. Like, the way it looks when they're flying over the city looks great. The clearly miniature town that they're flying over, loved it. Practical effects. This movie has all of the things that I love. It's so crazy that movies today could utilize these same techniques and just clean it up with a little digital, but instead they do these completely other, where they generate things from scratch, where everything's fake. You have actors acting in a warehouse of green, and then everything else is like put in later. Versus this, where it's like everything feels tangible, like it has a weight, like you can reach out and touch it. Appreciate that. So great effects, the flying, all that stuff. And Tiny Tim in this movie, like, I gotta say, Tiny Tim definitely feels like a non-binary character. Like, you could have said Tiny Tim was a girl in this movie. And I would, like, it was played by a female actress, and I would be like, okay, like, it just feels like a like a very gray area character, right? Which I love. It has, like, definitely that joy of children, of kids' joy. But as far as, like, when they labeled this character as like, oh, it's Tiny Tim, it's like, okay, right? Definitely, like, it's. I don't know. I enjoyed that as well. I did. And just the joy of sliding down the street on ice, right? And you see his nephew joining in with the kids. Oh, that's great, man. You know, just the simple joys of life back then. But yeah, I do appreciate Tiny Tim. Definitely feeling like a very progressive character. Like today, if they made that movie today and that performance from that actor was in that movie, the same people that value the characteristics of Ebenezer Scrooge, the people that worship billionaires for the fact that they have billionaires, the vast majority of people that value those types of people, if this movie was made today with that same actor playing Tiny Tim, they would protest this movie because it's too progressive. It's too progressive. Like, it's not that, it's too ambiguous. Also, I enjoy in this movie because not all of them. It is interesting. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to watch all of the versions of this story, because everybody's going to have a slightly different take on it. And one of the things I've noticed in just watching a few versions of it, when he has the spirit of Christmas past or present, which one is it? No, future. The future one, where he sees where Tiny Tim's dead, and he sees the contrast in how people act in losing Tiny Tim, how his family reacts, versus how Ebenezer Scrooge is treated, like how society almost celebrates his death, right? Oh, he was like a horrible person. Nobody was at his funeral. Right, that contrast that this movie has, which is not necessarily. I mean, there's other versions that have it, but I think the way this movie shows that contrast is great. Also, the feast that the Crackit family has in this movie, where it's like the goose, which later in many versions is turned into a turkey, but the goose, when he brings the goose home and it's still got the feathers, and all the kids are like petting it. Oh, Daddy, oh, look at it, so beautiful. Right? Obviously, in today's society, we'd be like, no, we can't acknowledge that our food used to be a living animal. We can't like appreciate the beauty of this animal before we feed on it, before it nourishes our body. We can't show any kind of respect in that way to this dead animal. But they like pet it. It's great. It's great. And even like the feast they have, she brings out like this flaming chocolate cake. Like just like over the top. Like this is like a 5-star meal that you would get at a prestige restaurant that I've never even gone to. They have a feast that is displayed and presented in a way at a level that I've never experienced in my life. And that's like this poor family that has tons of kids, right? Barely making ends meet because, of course, Scrooge doesn't want to pay Bob Crackit enough. Barely gave him the day off. And Miss Crackett's bringing in this flaming chocolate cake. I'm assuming I don't know what it is, but it was on fire, and it looked like chocolate cake. It looked delicious. And, of course, all the kids thankful for this meal that they're having. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if kids would even be thankful. Like, it's just so many, like, the reality of these characters in this movie are so different from reality. Like, kids being thankful for the small things like that. A wealthy, like, Scrooge type of a person not being celebrated by society.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote
the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to Asking Me Anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school. And you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus.
And now let's get back to the show.
And I did love the spirit of Christmas present in this movie. He is definitely like, one, I love how it shows how evil people are to each other during the holidays, right? He takes Scrooge to the street where like people are going shopping, right? They take their food to a place to get cooked because it's cheaper. They can't afford to cook it at home. Right, and they're like people running into each other on the streets and just angry, wanting to fight each other. And he waves his magical horn of joy at them, and they like, oh, let's go get a beer, buddy. Like they turn into like nice people. But I enjoy that it shows how people actually are during the holiday season. But I also like the way that the character itself looks, the spirit of Christmas present, where he's basically like a Viking hippie guy. He's wearing a robe that looks like it was designed to be. It's like a novelty robe that you would get for Christmas that looks like a Santa, almost the Santa type of a thing, but it's a robe, right? And he's like a giant Viking kind of a guy with a beard, almost like if the dude was a Viking, right? The dude from The Big Lebowski was a Viking, and he's just wearing a robe as the dude does, and he's just going around showing, like, listen, here you go. This is how horrible people are. I really enjoyed that as well. The nephew, when Ebenezer turns and changes, and he's like, okay, I'm going to be good, and he's like happy. I love how, like, nobody recognizes him. Like, they've never seen this guy happy, and his own nephew doesn't recognize him because he has a smile on his face. And then when they do realize it's him, they all think he's, like, mad. Like, they all think he's gone crazy. Every single person, right? Whether it's his own family, the people that his nephew is spending Christmas with, they all think he's gone insane, like he's off his rocker because he's, like, nice. Like, that's how horrible of a person he is, right? Like, if all of a sudden Elon Musk donated all of his money to charities and actually stopped homelessness and, like, did good things, like, infinitely easily with all of the money he wasted to buy a social media platform that is tanking as I speak, like, we would probably think he went crazy, right? If Donald Trump, like, all of a sudden went like, we need to stop being racist. Like, if Donald Trump got on a microphone, it's like, we need to stop being angry at people. We need to stop this violence. We need to stop being racist. Like, there is a massive issue with anti-Semitism and white supremacy, right? I mean, I got away with almost overturning the government. I haven't even been arrested. Like, if all of a sudden Donald Trump had that kind of clarity and was actually in the reality that everybody else is, and, like, we would all think he's crazy. It would be good, right? Instead of what we get is Kanye going crazy and then going in that direction. Not to tie this movie to current events, but who knows how long society will last. But I do love how everybody thinks Ebenezer Scrooge is just, like, batshit crazy because he's happy. People don't recognize him because he just has a smile on his face. I really appreciate that as well. Even when he shows up to the Crackett house, in other versions, I've seen him pretend to be angry. But in this version, I don't think he was. All right, there's versions where he goes and he's like, shows up to Crackett. He's like, what did I tell you about taking a day off or whatever? But in this one, he just shows up happy. They think he's crazy. But he's like, shows up with groceries. He's like, hey, Cratchit, help me with this stuff. Let's take it into your wife. This is all this food you get to eat. And I brought stuff. Look at the kids are here. Hey, kids. Right? He's like, they just think he's crazy. They're like, what is wrong with him? What is wrong with your boss? He's crazy. But in other versions I've seen, and I appreciate this one, right? I like seeing the fact that everybody's like, what is going on? Why are you, who are you, and what did you do with Scrooge? Ebenezer Scrooge. I keep wanting to say Scrooge McDuck. Disney, man. Brainwashing. But yeah, I appreciated that as well. And the toast with him and Tiny Tim giving the toast, right? The kid that provided the contrast of his death being meaningless or how horrible he is and how people enjoyed him when he died versus Tiny Tim where people were sad that he was gone, right? Being it kind of coming together to give that toast. I appreciated. But yeah, I enjoyed. It was a fun, short movie. It's like 80 minutes long, I think. 1 hour and 9 minutes. It's 69 minutes long. Hey, 69. That's great. Yeah. But it's a great short movie. I mean, even, some of the other versions, I started watching the animated one with Jim Carrey. Didn't watch it all the way through because I'm not sure if I'm going to do the top 5 or not. But I rewatched the Disney one from like 1983, which is like 30-something minutes long. Great. That's one I watched all the time as I was a kid. It's very similar. And then also the Muppets. I watched the Muppets version. And both the Muppets and the Disney one, the Mickey Mouse one, when he shows up to Crackett's house, he's like pretends to be angry, which I thought was weird. I was like, I like this one more. I mean, the other one's, it's kind of like him playing a joke, but it's like, he doesn't seem like, it doesn't feel, when he plays that joke in those versions, it doesn't feel like he really changed, right? It kind of feels like he's still holding on to that part and is like in a place where he's like it doesn't feel, like in this one, he's not joking. He doesn't understand jokes, right? He went from being miserable to happy. Right? And in those, he's like, oh, he's going to play a joke. Like he's a prankster now. It's like, no. That's not the kind of guy he is. He's not just like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. Anyway, A Christmas Carol, it's a classic for a reason. I love the effects. I love everything. That version of Scrooge is great. And again, watch it and look at the Tiny Tim character and tell me if that performance came out today, there would be people angry, right? Angry. I mean, we saw how people got with Disney on that Lightyear movie, where there was just like the mention of something, right? It's very hostile when it comes to anything progressive at all. So with this movie, the Tiny Tim character definitely felt progressive. It's just the performance-wise. Anyway, I loved it. A Christmas Carol. I could be way off. People are going to be angry, I'm sure. Angry in my comments. They're going to act like the people on the street in Christmas, just angry at me. They want to fight me for my opinions on this movie. But check it out. It's great.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring